Well, hello, Dr. Paul. Welcome to our Danish event here, where we're going to be speaking a little bit about our fantastic health protocol. Thank you, Dr. Paul, for taking time to be with us today.
Hi, Carla, and hi to all you Great Danes.
And they are Great Danes. So, Dr. Paul, there's so much going on right now in the world in regards to health. People are starting to look at what should I be doing for my health? And there's so much information out there about health, and how do you know what's real and what you should be following with all that information out there?
There is too much information out there. We're all suffering from information overload, and a lot of it is very suspect. I think a good place to start is use the medical databases, the scientific databases, PubMed, Google Scholar. There's one or two others, but they're more specialized. And if you have basically any kind of training which allows you to mine those data resources, that's a really good way to get hold of the information that you need. It's not a foolproof way. Not all reports are accurate. Not all trials are particularly well designed. And some studies, it has to be said, the results are manipulated by people who may have financial reasons for wanting to present data in one way rather than in another. And you still have to be careful. But it is a better way of getting closer to the origins of data rather than looking at second and third hand reports in newspapers, magazines, and television programs. So it's not a foolproof guide, but it helps. Or you can listen to me.
And I think we would all rather listen to you, Dr. Paul. You've spent many years after a while here studying health and finding out what is the best way to get your body healthy and to live longer and to stay young longer.
To be honest, I'm not so interested in living longer just for the sake of it. I think the idea of adding 10 years onto your lifespan, if it means that you're going to be disabled, dependent, pharmaceutically and in every other way, it doesn't seem to me to be a target that's worth striving for. But what I am interested in is making the most of your genetic potential. Living a life which will allow you to stay healthier for longer, to age more successfully. Now, if you do that, then you're probably going to live longer anyway, but that is a secondary issue. That's not where the science that I'm interested in is primarily aimed at. Now, particularly here in America, there is a population of people who neurotically strive for longer life, if not immortality, and they're willing to do almost anything to achieve those kinds of goals. That strikes me as being, it's a little irrational. It seems to me that the whole point of being alive, it is shaped and informed by the knowledge that we are finite, that we are mortal. And I'm not particularly interested in immortality, not for myself. As I said, I'm interested in health extension and all the benefits that come along with that. And could I just add, this is becoming more important now because of the way in which populations are shifting. Now, the latest projections indicate that world population is going to increase for a little bit longer, but then is going to start a long, slow decline. And we're going to see depopulation occurring. Many countries seeing their populations halved by the end of this century. As that happens, and as populations gray, that is demographically, the average age is increasing, the numbers of people who are still in the workforce are declining in proportionate terms. So who is going to pay for the upkeep, the care, the pensions of the elderly? The workforce won't be there to do it. Which means that it's more important than ever that we help people to live more healthily into old age, to retain their independence, right up until the point where they shuffle off this mortal coil. The best way of aging that I can think of is remaining healthy, compos mentis, able to look after myself and the people around me, those that I care for. And then when the time comes, to leave the stage with the minimum of fuss. Not requiring years of maintenance, other people caring for me. I don't want to do that. And it would be better if we could all learn to do that. Now, that's one of the targets. that we aim for with our Zinzino range of products, which are designed to prevent the attritions that are so commonly associated with aging. The weakening of bone, the thawing of arteries, the loss of brain cells. A great deal of that can be avoided. And what that means is you can retain independence. You can remain fully functional right up until the end, as they did in the mid-Victorian period. It's a more interesting model of aging, and it's a better way of dying.
I think everybody just was listening so intently to be able to live that quality of life. But Dr. Paul, so as you said, the products in Zinzino are designed to help people live that way. And I know one of the things that makes Zinzino unique to everybody else is having the test. But you know, it's testing a lot of different things, but mostly the balance of your omegas. And how important is that for people's health?
Well, let me just say that the first test, which is the basis of the approach that we have to chronic inflammation, is important because it moves us on from nutrition to something which is much more robust, which we call evidence-based nutrition. The rest of the industry is hooked to the idea that we'll just sell you supplements. We don't know if they're doing you any good, and the consumers usually don't know either. I'm not interested in doing that, and I really don't want to promote products to people who don't need them. So this 6-3 balance, the lipid profile that we're able to measure in cell membranes, actually has a significant prognostic value. If you have a poor ratio, you're probably going to have chronic inflammatory stress, which means that you're more at risk of a wide range of chronic degenerative inflammatory conditions. If, when we first test you, you have a good ratio, you probably have a pretty reasonable nutritional profile, and you're not so much at risk, and you don't need balance oil. So why bother why use it? Why take it? Why should we be selling it to you? We shouldn't. If you've got a bad result, then it makes absolute sense to use the balance oil, and then you can test for yourself again to see that something has actually moved and in the right direction. This is evidence-based nutrition. And as a principle, it's really at the core of the nutrition that we practice. So we are developing and have developed other tests which can be used to monitor progress and or indeed the requirements for taking a supplement with all of the rest of our range. This is what evidence-based nutrition is. And what we are trying to do is to drag nutrition out of the dark ages and put it onto a validated evidence-based platform. This is the way it has to go. This is what we've seen in medicine with the development of so-called evidence-based medicine, EBM. We are plowing a parallel furrow in promoting evidence-based nutrition.
I love that. So people don't have to guess anymore because they can test it and have proof. And I think it's quite amazing to think about it after 500,000 tests now, that of everybody who's testing themselves to find out if they're in balance, 95% of the population is failing the test. So they're not passing that test, but we're getting people into balance 120 days later so that they actually can feel safe and secure and that what they're doing is working.
Okay, we can show pretty consistently that people who use these products do get into balance within that 120-day period, which seems like a long time, but there's really no way of speeding it up. The shocking part of this story is that so many people come to us with bad results in the first place, and that is a huge and damning indictment of the modern food manufacturing and distribution business. We are eating a diet that is so far away from the diet that we were designed, and I don't mean intelligent design, that we evolved to live with, a natural diet. We are consuming so much ultra-processed food these days. It now accounts for half or more of many people's intake of calories. And of course, these are foods which are calorie dense, nutrient light. And so when we see people, we see that they don't only have a bad 6-3 ratio, but we and many other scientists have found that they're terribly malnourished in all kinds of other ways as well. And this is really a part of the terrible public health problem that we have today, where the chronic degenerative, non-communicable diseases have become so widespread, so prevalent, and where we're seeing them emerging in progressively younger and younger groups of patients. we're poisoning ourselves. And if people ate a healthy diet, a natural diet, Zinzino wouldn't be necessary. But we're working in this environment which has been taken over by these food companies, who now between them are killing more people, you've probably heard me say this before, than the tobacco industry does. And we need legislation to be put into place to harness the absolutely antisocial, genocidal activities of these big food multinational companies. It was relatively easy making a case against big tobacco. Well, when I say easy, there was a lot of political pushback, but it was easy for scientists to make the connection between tobacco and various types of diseases. It's more difficult with foods because, unlike the tobacco concept, where you have smokers and non-smokers, and you can make comparisons between them, we don't really have eaters and non-eaters. Everybody has to eat food. So there the comparisons are a little different. There we're able to make comparisons between people who eat a modern ultra-processed diet and people who live in different parts of the world or who have very different belief systems who don't consume any of those types of foods at all. So we can't make these comparisons. They're a little more difficult to make, but the picture I think now is very clear. We have a quite well-developed understanding of how the modern diet makes so many people so sick. And all we need now is a politician with the brains and the backbone to be able to take this enemy of the people on and actually do something about it. That's the missing link. That's the missing link.
But until that happens, because it might take some time for that, how about, how important this getting into balance is, and then you have designed some things that complement the balance so that people can even feel more secure in what they're doing. So I know you have said, the nutrients in our food aren't there, how it's affecting our body is important also. And that's kind of the basis of the health protocol, this three-legged balance in getting something for your health that's going to make a difference.
Well, the modern diet causes three very major interconnected issues. It causes chronic inflammatory stress, it causes dysbiosis, and it causes type B malnutrition. And these three things together are what is driving the tidal waves of chronic degenerative disease that have now become so prevalent in our society. Onto that, you have to add low levels of physical activity, especially for people who live in towns and cities. And that then adds insulin resistance and sarcopenia into this mix, a very, very toxic mix. There are pharmaconutritional tools, evidence-based tools that we can use to address every one of those issues. And as to what the outcome would be, well, I think we've seen for ourselves just how dramatic this type of nutritional improvement can be in individual cases, and we've all seen that. At the public health level, what the Blue Zone experience tells us, and the mid-Victorian data in particular, because as you know, this is an area that I'm particularly interested in, it suggests that about 90% of the current burden of chronic degenerative disease could simply be removed. Not all of it, because clearly there is a relatively small proportion of people who develop these very serious illnesses who have major genetic risk factors. And it's not at all clear to what extent we can alleviate those. Maybe partly in some cases, maybe not at all in others. But if we could alleviate and reduce the burden of chronic degenerative disease by 90%, that would already transform. It would transform society. It would mean that far more people could enjoy better, more sustained health. More grandparents would get to know their grandchildren and vice versa. We could cut out a large part of the cancer, of the proliferating hospitals and clinics and surgeries that currently disfigure the health landscape. We could make this world a very much better place.
Well, I think everybody's excited about everything that you're mentioning right now. So in regards to getting into balance is the number one, taking that test and making sure your body is into balance. How important is gut health to complement that?
Okay, well, I'm not going to say that getting into balance is number one. All these things are equally important. It's like a stool with three legs. Getting into balance is a part of it, and Balance Oil or Aqua X or Ascent is going to help you to get there.
Okay.
That's only going to rectify one of the three problems that the modern lifestyle and diet causes. We need to address type B malnutrition and dysbiosis, and that's what Xenobiotic and Extend are designed to do. I mean, balance will get you a long way, but it won't get you all the way around the track. We have to put the other things right as well.
I'm glad that you corrected me on that, because I've probably been saying that for a while. But okay, so when you have this three-legged chair, and you can't stand on two, so you need all three. So if you have balance, but I know that gut health, and as you said, the malnutrition, so you're putting all the vitamins and minerals back into the diet. But kind of explain a little bit about both of them. Like, you say they're both extremely important. So what is the most important thing of each?
Well, dysbiosis, I mean, I'll address them in no particular order, but dysbiosis is clearly a very major and very prevalent problem. And this is deeply involved not only in IBS and IBD, but it's also been implicated in a wide range of other disease states as well. So the impact of having a disturbed and unbalanced microbiota in the large bowel, the effects are not only local. And this was recognized in a recent huge meta-analytical study carried out by scientists working with the WHO, which showed that once you got your fiber intake per day up and over this threshold figure of about 30 grams, that the risk of early, which merely means preventable, death was reduced by 30%, which is huge, absolutely huge. And when you look at this data in a more mechanistic way, it pretty quickly becomes apparent that out of all the different fiber types, really the ones that count are the prebiotic fibers. And these are non-digestible carbohydrates, but they're fermentable. So they're non-digestible. When you eat them, they pass through the small intestine. You can't break them down. They don't add to blood glucose, so not a problem for diabetics or people like that. They pass into the large bowel and they become nutrients or food, not for you, but for the good bacteria that are still hanging on inside the large bowel. And when you send them the right food sources, they start to grow and proliferate. And as they do, they dislodge and they get rid of all those nasty gram-negative pro-inflammatory bacteria that you need some of, but you certainly don't want too much of. So by taking this actually very sophisticated and very complicated blend of time-released prebiotic fibers, what they're designed to do is to flip the microbiome from overwhelmingly gram-negative to gram-positive, from pro-inflammatory to anti-inflammatory, all the way through the different parts of the colon. And we know from a wide range of reports that this is extremely helpful in treating not only minor gut-related issues, but some very, very serious healthcare problems as well. Now, obviously, I have to be careful in what I say, because otherwise the regulators will come and drag me off to regulatory jail. We can't talk about the importance of the things that we're doing. And this is an example of just how very destructive the law has become. But the law is largely owned by the big corporations. Justice is not only blind, she has become incredibly biased because the regulatory agents have been co-opted, taken over by the companies they were once supposed to regulate. And our politicians are by and large deeply corrupted by this, and they're not any longer in a position to offer us much help. So we have to be careful about what we're saying. But if we know where to look, we can find the right types of information. And I think actually we have a responsibility to share that with others in a way that will allow them to improve their own health prospects.
So Dr. Paul, so tell me a little bit, especially here in Denmark, people are healthier than some of the Americans we know. Myself was included.
Not so much. Not so much. The latest data suggests that more than half of all adult Danes now have a chronic degenerative condition or disease state. So the Danes aren't that healthy. There is something rotten in the state of Denmark.
I did see that study. Although, a lot of Danes are already taking omega-3s. A lot of Danes are taking some type of a fiber for their gut. So what is it that makes Zinzino different?
Well, it doesn't really matter if you're taking a fish oil or not. Fish oil is a waste of time. And we know this because the Cochrane collaboration and a lot of other people have looked at this whole idea of doing prospective randomized clinical trials with fish oil. And guess what? It doesn't work. It just does not work. It doesn't reduce cardiovascular endpoints, neurological endpoints, neurogeriatric endpoints, ophthalmological endpoints. Fish oil doesn't work. The fish oil companies keep selling it because, hey, it's a great business, but it doesn't work. And yet we know that eating oily fish is extremely good for you. And there's a huge discrepancy there, which I think we've resolved with Balance Oil. We now understand that there's other things in fish, as well as the omega-3s, which are absolutely essential. You have to have the combination of these things to first of all, deliver the omega-3s to the tissues, and secondly, to exert the anti-inflammatory benefits. This matches exactly what we see in our library of dried blood spot samples. We see tens of thousands of samples from people who've been drinking Muller's Tran and all those other disgusting fish oil products ever since they were old enough to walk. They've been force-fed these terrible fish oils. They've been drinking them copiously, and then they come to see us, and they have terrible results. Now, if you're drinking fish oil, to which some well-meaning but completely ignorant food scientist has added D-alpha tocopherol or ascorbyl succinate or astaxanthin, the omega-3 doesn't get into your tissue where it's needed. You have good primary bioavailability. You can soak up the omega-3s into your bloodstream. And it really doesn't matter whether they're triglycerides, esters, or free fatty acids. We're pretty good at absorbing them unless you have liver disease. It's secondary bioavailability. That's the key issue. And that is, once the omega-3s have been taken up into the blood, how effectively can they be incorporated into the cell membranes in the peripheral tissues? Now, unless you have the lipophile polyphenols there, you're just not going to do that. And that's what we're seeing in our vast library, which is by far the largest in the world. So what we have done is to reconstitute or really transform the fish oil industry and fish oil science. And we will fairly soon have good clinical data from a prospective study that we're carrying out in a major teaching center in one of the EU member states to prove it. So there's a big difference. You could be taking fish oil, it's not doing you any good. If you switch to Balance Oil, you can see from your test results that very, very different things are happening. I want to come back to Extend because we did talk about the three-legged stool. Extend is a vitamin and mineral supplement. Yes, but it's a lot more than that. That's just the foundation of the formulation. On top of that, we've added different layers. So you have, for example, another layer which consists of all 8 versions of vitamin E, not just D-alpha, because all the other versions of vitamin E have very interesting functions, and it looks as if they work best in combination. On top of that, there is another layer which consists of a whole range of carotenoids and xanthophylls and polyphenols, and these are groups of phytonutrients which we now understand are really important in supporting the long-term health, not only of many organs and tissues in the body, but in general. And on top of that, we have got a very significant amount of a compound called 1,3,1,6-beta-glucan, which is intensively researched and is vastly important in improving your innate immune system and improving your resistance to infection. Infection from a wide range of different types of pathogens, viral and bacterial, and has anti-allergy effects as well. On top of that, right up on the top of this towering edifice of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and other atypical micronutrients, we have a little pinch of isothiocyanate, which might sound ominous, but is, as I think you know, an essential substrate for an enzyme called lactoperoxidase. And this adds additional immunological enhancement or protection into the mix. So this is a very, very extensive, very ambitious formulation. There's nothing else like it in the market anywhere. So you can be taking a multivitamin and multimineral. We've done studies with those. We know that they don't work. You have to have all of these things. And the reason why you need all of these things is because the modern diet has left people so depleted in so many different areas that most people are like, vintage cars that have been left to rust and rot in a garage for 50 years. And by the time we get to see them, every system is either broken down or on the verge of breaking down. So the tires are bald and the engine's full of carbon and there's no coolant in the radiator. There's all kinds of things that are wrong. I mean, everything is wrong. The idea that you can bring this terrible old, old wreck back onto the roads and drive at full speed just by topping up the windscreen wash reservoir, just by taking a pinch of vitamin C, is ludicrous. I mean, that's a pharmaceutical concept. It has nothing to do with nutrition and it has nothing to do with health. What we're doing is applying a kind of a general tune-up and restoration program. And the people who go through this health protocol, I mean, they will tell you just what a vast difference it makes to their lives. And I can tell you as well that in many cases, these are people who are under medical care. And when their doctors see the condition of their patients reversing, when they see them healing and becoming independent of pharmaceutical maintenance, the doctors then want to get involved with us as well. And doctors are working with us in every country where Zinzino is currently active. Once we finish this talk, I'm going to go on to another conversation with a range of doctors from all over the world where we're talking about some of the basics of pharmaconutrition. And what I find really heartwarming is that although some people think, oh, doctors just prescribe drugs, they're just interested in making money, that's really not the case. There are many doctors who really are concerned with the health and the well-being of their patients. They know very well that the drugs they use can only tinker with the most superficial of the symptoms of disease, which generally gets worse as the patients go on. Once they understand that we're not talking about nutrition, but about biochemistry, about pharmacology, once they begin to see how these tools can be properly used, they love it. They come on board. They learn that we're speaking actually the same language. They learn that we can work together and that we can do more when we work together than either of us can on our own.
That's super exciting, Dr. Paul. And actually, as you're saying this and talking about the health protocol, I can really feel the passion because you've put so much work into it. It's just like, you know, everybody should be taking the health protocol, looking into it, whether they're, you know, whoever they are, whatever country they are. Everybody should take a look at what the health protocol can do for them because they don't know how their car is running. You don't know how it is on the inside, but
No.
we can listen to you and find out what we need to do to get the car running the best.
Well, I think if you're physically very, very active and you have a personal nutritionist or you have a degree in nutritional biochemistry, then you're probably going to be okay. So we're talking about top athletes and sports people who have nutritional coaches who are eating a lot of food and probably eating a pretty good diet. I don't think that very many of them would need us, but we're talking in proportionate terms about a very, very small number of percentage of people in the general population. The general population is extremely badly nourished. It has chronic inflammatory stress, dysbiosis, type B malnutrition, and they expect, as a result, they think it's normal as they get older to start developing the symptoms of all of these conditions. And as I said, in the vast majority of cases, these conditions are avoidable. They're so common now that people think of them as natural aspects of the aging process. They're not. What we are dealing with is a population that is being chronically poisoned. And what we are supplying are the antidotes. And those antidotes would not be necessary if the food companies were to assume their responsibility and stop selling us such shoddy, disgusting, and dangerous products.
Okay, Dr. Paul, so my last question for you. How do you see, like, what is your vision future-wise? How do you see the health protocol? What is it going to do to make an effect for the future?
I think that comes in two phases. In the intermediate future, what I hope will happen is that people who come to understand what our problems are and how we can solve them will take this information and spread it out, share it, use it to improve your own health, but help your friends, your family. And you know, we live in an age when we have totally lost any trust we ever had in politicians. And a lot of the trust that we had in other types of authorities as well. We are more suspicious of religious leaders, of technological leaders. But we trust our peers and our friends. This is the age of social networking. And that's, I think, one of the things that makes direct marketing such an interesting area to be in. We can talk to people we know, people who trust us and who we trust, and we can share this information with them. And I see in the intermediate future a really glowing prospects for Zinzino and other companies like Zinzino, who I hope will join us in this field of evidence-based nutrition. I fervently hope that in the end, we will be so successful that we will make ourselves redundant. Because I believe that once enough people come to understand the importance of nutrition, that there is going to become, it's going to become a political movement. There will be such pressure generated by consumers that even our corrupt and stupid political leaders will begin to realize that they will do well to listen to that and to bring into fruition a political and regulatory framework which will ensure that the food universe becomes less destructive and in general healthier. In the same way that Ralph Nader did with his book Unsafe at Any Speed, he forced Detroit and the major car manufacturers to start to engineer safety into their previously extremely dangerous and unroadworthy vehicles. We need an equivalent for that in the food industry. That's where I hope we will be. And when that happens, I'll be able to hang up my boots and retire.
Oh, Dr. Paul, I love that. And I love that that's what we're working for, to make that difference. I believe it's made such a difference in my life, and I know so many people that it's made such a difference for them. So Dr. Paul, we want to thank you for taking your time to speak with us today. We so appreciate you, and we're all so on board with this mission. Thank you for taking the time for us, Dr. Paul.
It's a pleasure. Now I shall return to my castle of solitude.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.